It turned into a school for girls and then a convent. And now it's up for sale for $40 million.
We'll just start a Kickstarter and we'll go buy it and turn it into a super rad horror movie museum.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have a creepy base. We could literally, that's the thing, you could have a horror movie museum and keep the basement exactly the way it is in this movie. Because it would you would just be paying homage to Scream 3.
Well, I bet that's not currently in the basement. I bet that went away with the studio.
Oh, yes, probably.
But I don't know. I like that they kept it. That would have been fun too.
Yeah.
So also notice that when Angelina was stabbed, her body was dragged away.
Yeah.
That comes up later. Well, actually, it doesn't come up later. It never comes up ever again. But in the Scream trilogy box set, they list an in memoriam of every character who died, was killed by Ghostface killers, and Angelina Tyler isn't listed.
And that list was compiled by Wes Craven.
So it was his ending that she would be a part of it then, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that she faked her death there and has gotten away scot-free.
Yeah. Again, I really like that there's only one killer in this, and I really, because I just love the confusion of the whodunit, and I think it flowed. I like that she wasn't an accomplice or a second killer. I really do. I think it was a fun twist because we know Scream movies, there's always two killers except for this one.
I feel like the killer in this movie, despite not being as brutal with his actual killings, like the blood aspect, because you don't see a lot of plunging or blood
actual
splurting.
stabbing.
Yeah. He's very physical. Like he beats the shit out of some people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Much more so than in the other movie. Given that the first two killers were high school students, and then the second two were a college kind of film dork and a middle-aged woman, it kind of makes sense, I guess. But yeah, he's intense. He's throwing people through windows and shit.
Well, I do also think it does have to make up for the fact that there's not a lot of blood in this. I mean, there were only 10 gallons of blood in this versus the first one had 50 and then the second one had 30. This one only has 10. So you have to kind of make up for that in some kind of way. So I do feel like, him being a little bit more brutal in the beating kind of does that.
This is another example of them having a difficult time with the MPAA. It was such a pain in the ass to even get this movie approved with as little blood as there is, that Wes Craven said, I'm ready to retire from horror movies.
Man, that's sad.
Yeah. And, for all intents and purposes, this movie straight up killed the Scream franchise for about 10 years. Like,
yeah,
it was not well received. People did not, and whether you want to take it's an indictment of Hollywood and it's super, super satirical, or it's just another Scream movie, either way, it fucking killed the franchise.
Wasn't it supposed to kill the franchise? Wasn't it supposed to be the closed door?
Final? Yeah, this is the final. Well, this was supposed to be the final chapter.
Yes,
question mark.
But in instances where money talks more than intent, it did not perform as well in that regard to make a potential fourth movie logical, if that makes sense. So even like Friday the 13th Part 4, we all knew Part 5 was coming. And it was like 2 years later because it made so much money and it just kept making money. Same with Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. You had New Nightmare like less than 5 years later, if that. So the intent versus the dollar sign speaking, this movie couldn't back it up with the dollar sign.
So earlier we saw the killer rug pull Tyson. And now Dewey is shooting and shooting and shooting. And the killer just perfectly throws the knife in a 3D kind of way where you see the knife almost coming at you and it hits Dewey in the forehead.
Yeah.
What do you think about these two action sequences in the movie?
They're very Sam Raimi. They're very slapstick. And if I go with the assumption that Wes Craven is doing a fuck you, I'm making over the top indictment of everyone, I'm going to go full bore and have this. It's almost Three Stooges-esque. It's to that point. So I think it's interesting. Not good, not bad. Interesting.
I don't prefer it, but it is. I like that you're saying it's Wes telling Miramax to go away.
Maybe this is Wes Craven's nod to Sam Raimi by adopting some of his kind of moves.
I like that too. How about you, Victoria?
It was very slapstick to me. I feel like, you know what's funny is like, I feel like I really didn't think much on it because the scene after it was so absurd to me that I was like, I kind of got lost on it. I do think like I love getting to see Gail kick some ass. Love that. That's great. But yeah, I just think seeing Sydney with her feet up on a cop's desk and like going through his desk, reading his books, reading her file, and no one's watching her. I got lost on that fact more than like the previous fight sequence because I was like, no. Yeah. So this, and she just starts slamming doors. Like she just owns the place. Like this to me is absolutely ridiculous. This whole sequence here is just off the wall for me. So like the fighting sequence beforehand didn't leave much of an impression, but I do love Gail. I love seeing Gail kick some ass. That's always appreciated.
I think my other big problem with the movie, and we talked about Neve Campbell's schedule and how she's only available for like 20 days. I think they should have held off on the movie and waited for her to be available. The problem is Harvey Weinstein was pushing it through to make the money quickly. If they would have given them more time on the script, because Aaron Kruger had 6 weeks to put together his first draft after having no involvement with the other movies. So he was going in kind of blind. And then if they had waited and had Neve Campbell for more time, they could have given her more to do in the movie. And it could have been truer in that aspect because you spend a lot of time with Dewey and Gail, but they're fighting almost all of it. And it gets to be like a little bit tiresome.
Now, I will kind of touch on going back to when she was on the sets and everything. And she was like moving from her room to her room, or from room to room, going from her room to like her mother's room, and she's like, would you settle for a PG-13 relationship and whatever? Her having this kind of really emotional response. Everyone processes trauma differently. So who knows how someone would react to going back to where, there was so much murder and so much history. It's just interesting that they just kind of, it was almost just kind of like watching her walk through everything with a daze. And so it was like, so you're leaning more into her being the trauma victim and her dealing with, and her not being able to deal with a whole lot. So I feel like it's right in the middle between that spectrum of you're not healed, so you're in a like a fireproof house versus I'm so healed that I'm coaching other people on how to heal from it. I feel like her walking into that set, having people be like your best friends be murdered, your mother be murdered, and then all of a sudden you have to go back into the exact same house. Like, I feel like it was such a daze of a scene, of a sequence, really.
So as we get toward the end where the killer is revealed, there is a way that could have made this work for me with the alternate end of Scream 2, where there was a third ghost face in the clock tower. If they had stuck with that and had that in there, it would have made the killer in this movie make more sense to me. And I think I would have liked this movie a lot more if they had gone in that kind of down that road.
Sure. No, that's fair. That's totally fair because it would have meant that the killer was more involved than just, and the fact that like it does bode to the killer's story too, of like, I went and found her. So we're okay.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. So we're here. So he goes, your killer is Roman, the movie director. And so the whole gimmick here is that Roman is Sydney's brother, half brother. Right. So while Sydney's mother, Maureen Prescott, also known as Rena Reynolds, was in Hollywood, she got pregnant, gave birth to Roman, and basically left him, and then moved back home to Woodsboro. Got back with Sydney's dad, had Sydney, whole new life. He came to find her. She said, get out. And it fucking tossed him for a loop. And so, yeah, his whole point is to kill Sydney because, how dare she have the mother he should have had first.
Yeah. Which I think it's a great motive, honestly. I think it's one
a great motive.
Yeah. It's one of the more kind of plausible ones.
Sure.
But again, give me that third killer at the end of Scream 2 to kind of,
it would
you
have
know,
fit. It would have fit. It would have
Yeah.
fit the story of him going back to Woodsboro and stuff. And is, you know, it would have, yeah, it would have been really, really good had they done that. But yeah, I will say the motive in this killer is, to me, it's one of the best motives for sure.
So yeah, now that we are talking about the revealed information, what did you think about going back to the beginning, learning information about Maureen that we didn't have, changing her backstory, adding the new information, saying that Roman was involved ever since the beginning? How do you feel about that as a movie twist and fitting into the Scream franchise?
It fit because the killers always have something to do with Sydney. They all come back to her in some kind of way, shape, or form. To me, the Mrs. Loomis portion was a stretch. Like, I felt like I loved it, but I feel like the Mrs. Loomis, oh, you had plastic surgery and all this, and oh, now you're the killer. That felt a little bit more like of a reach for me than the, you know, long lost brother coming back and being insane. So I feel like this motive is definitely one of the better ones. So it was easier to swallow. That's what she said.
Gross. Don't be gross, Tammy.
I love it. I love it so much.
So earlier, he faked his death. He put himself in a coffin. Gail went up to him and checked his pulse on his wrist and was like, oh, he's dead. And originally I was like, well, that's just the biggest fucking plot hole, because she's seen so many dead bodies at this point, 2 different massacres. Wouldn't she know how to check a pulse, what a dead body looks and feels like? But then I tried to take my own pulse on my own wrist, and then
Impossible.
it was like, okay, well, that doesn't work. That's made up. That's the thing that doesn't exist.
EMTs are just showing off.
Yeah. So yeah, then I was like, okay, that's not a plot hole. That she's scared. She's touching him. She's like, well, he looks dead. And
so yeah, that for me wasn't a reach. Like, it didn't bother me. I do like the killer removing himself from kind of the mystery by faking his own death. Although in the larger plot, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, then he got to be free to off the other cast members
without suspicion,
unbeknownst.
There was also an alternate ending where
there were 3 alternate endings.
Well, depending on which version of the script you're looking at, there's a ton of alternate plot lines, and one of them actually featured the end scene, all the characters getting up at the end, and it being a Stab fan group doing it, which was
I hate it.
Yeah, terrible fucking idea.
I hate that idea.
But it was one of the things being tossed around as they were doing the like, how can we make a Scream movie about killing teenagers and not kill people? And like, that's been done before in like April Fool's Day, and it's not great. I don't like it.
Yeah, not a favorite.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it, just that it would have been new to me, and that it was a horror movie reference to April Fool's Day, which I haven't seen yet. Yeah. So that I think that would have been very Scream to say, like, look at this cool idea we brought back into the forefront that you diehard horror movie nerds will understand.
Yeah. And then you could have Martha or Tyson's character equivalent in that movie be like, oh, it's like an April Fool's Day, and everyone's like, oh, cool, clever reference. This is Scott Foley as Roman Bridger. This is his first big movie where he's a main character. And
really?
He does a fantastic job. He had like bit parts on TV and shit beforehand. Yeah, he's pretty great in these final scenes.
I do also want to note that I think it's very interesting. Everyone like, fame is such a huge portion and a huge theme in the Scream movies, because you have Billy and Stu who want to be famous, or well, they want to get away with it pretty much. and they want to be the ones who like survived the killer. In the second one, you have Mickey, who he's like, we're going to trial. Like, I'm going to be a name. You know what I mean? Like,
He wants to be
a,
infamous.
he wants to be infamous. You have this one where Roman's like, you got the mother and you're Sydney the star and everything. And then in the fourth one, we get another, I'm not going to spoil it, but in the fourth one, we get a like, yeah, it's all about Sydney. Now it's going to be about me. Like, fame is such a huge theme in all